Alright, in problem 5 and problem 6 and 7, we are given the standard angle and we are asked to calculate the related angle. And if you don't know the difference between standard angle and related angle, please go back to the definitions in this handout. Then we are asked to determine the sign of each trigonometric function, which is the sign of the sine, cosine, and tangent. And also we are asked to calculate the three trigonometric functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. So the related angle in question number 5 can be found by determining in which quadrant is the vector. And you can see here R is in the second quadrant. And in the case of the second quadrant, the related angle will be equal to 180 minus the standard angle, theta. So basically, the related angle would be equal to 180 degrees minus 131 degrees. And this should yield 49 degrees for the related angle. Now, the related angle is important in order to calculate the trigonometric functions. Now, regarding to part B of the question, determine the sign of each trigonometric function. Now, the sign is determined by which quadrant is the vector located. So we can see here the vector is located in the second quadrant. And second quadrant means what? Means the x component of the vector is negative, while the y component of the vector is positive. Because the projection of the vector on the x-axis will be in the negative x direction. That's the projection here. If we project the vector, this will be the x component of the vector. As you see, it's in the negative x direction, while the projection of the vector in the y direction will be positive. So this is the y component here of the vector. This is the x, this is the y. So the y will be positive, the x will be negative. Hence, the only trigonometric function that will be positive is the sine, because sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is always positive. And you can see here the note that r is always positive, so the hypotenuse is always positive. So sine theta will be positive, while cosine theta and tangent theta will be negative. Why? Because cosine theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and adjacent is the x component divided by r. X is negative. Negative divided by positive will give you negative. And the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. The opposite is positive, which is the y, but the adjacent is negative, so positive over negative will give you negative. So in the first quadrant, if the vector is located in the first quadrant, all the trigonometric function will be positive. If the vector is located in the second quadrant, only the sine will be positive while cosine and tangent will be negative. If the vector is located in the third quadrant, the sine and the cosine will be negatives, while the tangent will be positive. Finally, if the vector is located in the fourth quadrant, the sine and the tangent will be negative, while the cosine will be the only positive. You can go back to the introduction part before those problems, as it addresses those important concepts. So now part C asks us to calculate the trigonometric function, sine, cosine, and tangent. And since we have the angle and we know the sine, we can easily do the calculation. So this is part A, this is part B. So part C, simply you'll do the sine 49 degrees, cosine 49 degrees, of course you'll use the calculator, and tangent 49 degrees, or you can go with the standard angle. Actually, if you go with the standard angle, it will give you the correct sign. You don't have to worry about positive and negative because the answer will include the correct sign. Suppose we are going to go with the related angle. We are using sine, cosine, and tangent applied on the related angle. You need to know that the sine you'll have to place positive here, while the cosine will be negative and the tangent will be negative. And just plug the values into the calculator and you'll get the correct answers. Now notice here in question 6, the vector is in the third quadrant, so the x and the y are negatives, hence the tangent will be the only positive because opposite over adjacent. The tangent angle is the opposite over the adjacent, and negative over negative will give you positive, while the sine and the cosine will be both negatives. In question number 7, they are located in the fourth quadrant. So the cosine will be the positive, while the sine and tangent angle will be negative. All right, thank you.